Welcome to an installment of CCSD Living Environment. Today we're going to look at some different relationships in a community. Remember, a community is all of the populations in an area, or all of the different species in an area. The first one that I'd like to look at is competition. With competition, there's two organisms living in the same environment or habitat, utilizing the same limited resources such as food, water, space, light, and oxygen. So those two organisms are trying to get enough of whatever the resource is that they need so they can survive. Now, it may be two organisms of the same species, but it could also be two different species, like a squirrel and a chipmunk. They're living in the same habitat, and they do have some resources in common. Or it could be two members of the same species, two different squirrels. Either way, they're trying to get enough of the resource so they can survive. Competition oftentimes results in natural selection, in that only the most suited survive and pass their genes on to their offspring. The whole idea is that you can get enough of what you need so you can pass your genetic material on to the next generation. Now, if you can't get enough of what you need, if you can't survive in your environment, you're not going to be able to reproduce and pass your genetic information on. Another example of a relationship would be predation. Predation is where the food is primarily obtained by the killing and consuming of animals. We're familiar with the predator and prey. The predator is the animal that is hunting, the prey is the animal that is hunted. Most of us think of the predator-prey relationship and the fact that the job of the predator in that ecosystem is to keep the prey population in check, or to keep a balance on the prey population. But the fact that we don't usually look at is that the density of the prey population actually determines the population of the predator. So it's kind of got this nice relationship where it's working both ways, in that yes, the predator does help to control the prey population, but the prey population is actually determining the population of the predators. So if you look at this very simple graph that I have with time on the x-axis and the number of organisms on the y-axis, the orange line is the prey population, or my rabbit population, and the purple line is the predator population, or the fox population. As the prey population goes up, the predator population can go up. When the prey population starts to come down, the predator population starts to come down. And what do you think caused the prey population to start coming down? The fact that the predators had increased to a point where to get enough, so enough of the predators had enough food, they were killing more and more and more of the prey. So that causes the prey population to start to decrease. As the prey population went down, the predator population went down. And again, we come down here, so all right, things are kind of back to normal again. Prey population will start to increase, so what happens? Predator population starts to increase. And those two populations will continue on, basically balancing each other out. So nature has this way of making sure that one population doesn't completely exceed, what was that term? Carrying capacity, so that we don't end up with populations that go away because they grow completely out of control. Let's shift our focus for a minute. Instead of just looking at the specific type of relationship, let's look at what organisms might do in a predator-prey relationship. Organisms may have adaptations that increase their ability to survive in their environment. For example, camouflaging. If you camouflage yourself, you disguise yourself to help capture the prey or to escape your predator. And another example would be mimicry, where one species will resemble another to enhance their survival. One thing that I'd like you to do for tomorrow is to see if you can find a couple examples of camouflage and mimicry and bring them to class so we can discuss them as a group. And the final type of relationship that we're going to talk about today is called symbiosis. That prefix sym means together, and remember bio means life or living. So with symbiosis, it's a living together. Different organisms that live together in a close association. The relationship may or may not be beneficial to both organisms. At this point, we're not concerned about how the organisms are affected by the relationship. All we're saying is that they live close enough together that they could affect each other. Now, Close enough means the proximity is relatively near. It's not New York and California. So they're living within the same ecosystem, and they're living close enough that it truly has an effect on the other organism's survival, or it completely doesn't affect them at all. So mutualism is one example of that. It's a plus-plus relationship, being that both of the organisms are benefited. Now, if we think about an insect like a honeybee, the honeybee will fly to the flower, and it'll go into the flower to get the nectar out of the flower. In the process of finding its way into the flower, it picks up some pollen on its body. So when it goes to the next flower to go in to get the nectar, that pollen from the first flower gets dropped off in the second flower. So is the insect benefited? Yes, it's getting the nectar. Is the flower benefited? Yes, because it's being pollinated, so it can pass its genes on to the next generation. Commensalism. Commensalism is a plus-zero relationship. With commensalism, the relationship where one organism benefits from the interaction while the other organism is not helped or hurt. So the one organism is benefited, but the other one is completely unaffected at all. A great example of that is the egret and the buffalo. The buffalo walks through the tall grass, and as it walks through, all these insects fly out of the grass. Well, the bird comes along and it snags the insects out of the air and eats them. Is the insect benefited? Absolutely, it gets food. Is the buffalo affected either way? No. There's no effect on the buffalo at all. If that bird wasn't there, the buffalo would still just walk through the grass because those insects are not hurting the buffalo. So by the bird eating them, the buffalo has no effect. It's just kind of happening. Another one is the remora and the shark. When sharks eat, they kind of make a mess. There's pieces and particles of food that are flying all over the place. And the shark doesn't care about that, but that little remora fish does, because the remora fish comes along and he picks up those little particles of food and he eats them. So is the remora benefited from the relationship? Absolutely. He gets dinner. Is the shark benefited? Well, no, but the shark isn't harmed either. It's not affected by that relationship at all. There's no effect to the shark from the remora being there. And finally, the last relationship we're going to look at is parasitism. Parasitism is a plus-minus relationship. It's a relationship where one organism lives on or in another. The organism that is living or having something live on it is called the host. So the host is alive, and there's something living on it or in it. That's the parasite. The host oftentimes continues to live, but is somehow harmed from the relationship. Think about this from the parasite's point of view. Do you want to kill your host? No, because then either you have to find another host or you die. So the parasite really doesn't want to kill the host. In the case of a flea and a dog, the flea doesn't kill the dog, but the dog's pretty uncomfortable from the flea being there. Athlete's foot and humans. Athlete's foot doesn't want to kill us, it wants to live off of us. So it's an uncomfortable relationship for the human. It's harmed by athlete's foot, but it doesn't kill it. Ticks and deer, or ticks in any mammal for that matter. The tick is benefited, and whatever the tick is living on is negatively impacted by that. So with parasitism, one benefits, usually greatly, and the other one is harmed in some way. Now, could it lead to death? It could, but again, from the parasite's perspective, you don't want to kill your host. So the host, one more time, is the organism that the parasite is living on or living in. If you can find some examples of mutualism, commensalism, or parasitism, or if you have some ideas about those, bring those with you tomorrow so we can look at them. I hope you enjoyed today's community relationships video. Have a nice day.